iPhone 14 Pro is finally out and it has one of the biggest camera updates in many years, so let's have a quick look at its cameras versus iPhone 13 Pro Max and find out, is it that big of an upgrade?
What's good, guys? Greetings from Lisbon, Portugal, and I'm in Apple store as you can see right now. Unfortunately, I'm not able to bring the iPhone 14 Pro Max to Russia yet, but I hope it will be changing soon. So today let's have a look at the cameras and compare those. You can now see both pictures from either phone. Selfie camera is improved, and as you can see, you can close focus right now. So let's have a look at both of those and let's go.
iPhone 14 Pro has updated 12 megapixel selfie camera, which should look much better, but to be honest guys, I don't see a huge difference. Even if we zoom in 5 times, the difference is not that big. Also, selfie camera in 14 Pro and Pro Max has autofocus right now, which is great, but as you can see, the minimum focusing distance is not that big. I also do prefer the white balance on the 14 Pro Max. My skin looks a little bit less green, but overall these two selfie photos are pretty much comparable in my opinion. Now let's switch on the portrait mode, and here I am with my wife Katyusha, and as you can see, the photos look very similar, only the white balance is a little bit different, but in terms of detaching our faces from the background, they do kind of similar job. The only aspect that I saw is this detachment of my ear from the background is a touch better with the 14 Pro Max, but once again guys, this difference is not dramatic. Now let's look at the ultra-wide cameras. At the first glance, the difference is negligible. The iPhone 13 Pro Max is a bit noisier, the 14 Pro Max is a touch better, but on this picture it really messed up the white balance because it's too warm in my opinion on the 14 Pro Max. Overall, the macro capabilities are also pretty similar. In this case, I really enjoy more the 13 Pro Max because of the white balance, but all in all, the ultra-wide cameras are more than comparable. It's a bit better in terms of low-light capabilities on the 14 Pro Max. Now let's have a look at the main camera with 12 megapixel photos. So the iPhone 14 Pro Max does shoot 48 megapixel photos, but only in Apple ProRAW. Here is the regular JPEG, I would say, and it's 12 megapixels. The sensor is bigger on the 14 Pro Max, and we can see a touch more background blur, the natural background blur on the 14 Pro Max. And also this picture is a bit sharper, probably because of the shorter shutter speed. But when we switch to 48 megapixel Apple ProRAW mode, you can definitely see how much sharper and better the image looks with the 48 megapixel on 14 Pro Max. Just look at this texture, at this detail. The image doesn't look like it's been painted, it's like a real normal picture, and I really appreciate that Apple finally reached out and gave us 48 megapixels. On some shots I cannot even read the text with the 13 Pro Max, but I can with the 14 Pro Max, like this Huawei FreeBuds Pro 2 text. And we are zoomed in 10 times guys, by the way. And even if I took kinda selfie with the main camera, you can see how much more detail my eye has, my eyebrows, and all of the, little hair on my face. Some, texture in my skin is also really apparent on the 48 megapixel shot, so I would definitely use this mode a lot. One more pretty cool feature of the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the 2x camera, which is the crop, a digital crop from the center portion of the main camera, and it gets you 12 megapixel picture, but it's really sharp because it's one-to-one readout of the pixels. And on this shot, I've just digitally cropped in with the iPhone on 2x. And this difference is also pretty dramatic to my eye. The picture on the left with the 13 Pro Max looks like it's a painting, but on the right it's a sharp and nice image. The sharpness difference is not that dramatic, but you can definitely see that it's less noisy and it's much more detailed. I really appreciate that Apple also added this mode, because right now the main camera is 24mm full frame equivalent, and if you do a 2x camera you'll get around 50mm full frame equivalent, which is nice for shooting people and overall less distorted image. Now let's have a look at the 3x cameras. Basically they are identical to my eye. It's a little bit software update and it says that it's better in terms of low lights, but to be honest guys, I don't see a dramatic difference between those two, so it's more or less the same 3x camera. Now let's have a look at the portrait mode with the 1x camera. It's also looking pretty much identical. You can definitely see that the 14 Pro Max is a bit wider, 26mm on 13 Pro Max and 24mm focal length on the 14 Pro Max. And I do prefer the 13 Pro Max focal length, of course, for portrait shots, but overall the dynamic range and overall sharpness of the image is pretty much comparable, and I would say that the separation from the background is really the same actually, but the thing I like more on the 14 Pro Max is the white balance, and skin kinda pops throughout the background, whereas on the 13 Pro Max it kind of blends into the background. Here is the portrait shot on 2x camera. That's what I'm talking about 50mm focal length, and I really enjoyed those portraits with 2x camera. I would use those a lot, as I said before. And here is the 3x portrait of those two phones, and I would say they look kinda identical. I just a little bit prefer the separation from the background of the iPhone 14 Pro Max. All in all, the separation from the background and the look of the portrait shots from the 14 Pro Max are more than acceptable, and I think this is one of the best camera phones for portrait shots on the market right now. But not without some flaws, of course. As you can see on this shot, we have some separation issues, so be careful shooting the portrait shots. So now let's have a look at the video part of things. So here is the 0.5x or ultra wide camera in 4K 30 FPS. I would say the images look really similar. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is a little bit less noisy, as you can see from these shots. I hope that the YouTube compression didn't ruin the shots completely, the footage. But if you zoom in, you can see that the 14 Pro Max has a little bit sharper image and less noise. Now let's have a look at 1x camera. It got the biggest update, as you might have noticed, and in terms of video, it does shoot better video in my opinion, less noisy, that's for sure, but all in all, it's more than comparable. I also like the white balance more on the main camera of the 14 Pro Max. I'm not that red and orangey in terms of skin tone, but resolution wise it's more or less identical. So now let's switch to 2x camera on the 14 Pro Max and make a digital crop of 13 Pro Max. As you can see, the difference is pretty dramatic. So the 14 Pro Max is giving us a ton more detail, less noise, and overall the image looks pretty much identical to the 1x camera. Now maybe in low light it would be worse, but I really like this feature. The 3x camera more or less looks identical to my eye. I would even say that the 13 Pro Max sometimes looks a bit better, but overall 3x camera is kind of the same. So one of the biggest updates of the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the cinematic mode in 4K, up to 30 frames per second and also 24 frames per second. And as you can see guys, it's totally worth it. The 4K resolution on the cinematic mode is not only sharper, but it also detaches the object from the background more precisely, let me say, and I do like the cinematic mode. It's now much more usable than before. And also you can see the detachment from the background when you have a person in the shot is also much better. The parts of her face are not that blurry, and overall the image looks pleasing and nice. But I have a tutorial on the cinematic mode and how to use it properly to get the best results, so I'll leave a link down below and you'll definitely know some new things from that video. So overall, big thumbs up for 4K in the cinematic mode, both in 1x camera and even in the 3x camera. As you can see here, the results are better as well. A few words about slow motion capabilities and time lapses. As you can see guys, the slow motion in 120 frames per second is almost identical. It's still 1080p, no 4K super slow motion, only up to 60 frames per second, and the image quality is so-so, and the time lapses are as well, only in 1080p. Apple, please finally give us 4K time lapses, please. And here is the super steady mode of the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and I wouldn't really tell a difference. You do get a pretty big crop from the main camera or from basically any camera you use, and overall the image quality drops to 2.7K, and I don't really think that I'll be using this option too often. The normal stabilization of the iPhone is just perfect almost. So guys, let's conclude. I really enjoyed three main things. The first one being 2x camera, which provides you with really nice photos and pretty good video as well. The second one is cinematic mode in 4K. I really enjoy this mode, and you can get real cinematic footage with this mode if you treat it right. And the third and the biggest in my opinion is the 48 megapixel photos, which look really great in terms of detail and sharpness, and overall I do like this feature a ton. So if you're into those three aspects of the phone while shooting, you're definitely going to be upgrading and be very happy about it. But if you do use a ton of telephoto, if you do use a ton of super wide angle lens or just time lapses in slow motion, this is not worth it guys. The 13 Pro Max is still a great camera phone.
Well guys, that's been it. I know that it's not a perfect condition for testing the footage, but it's pretty challenging lighting as you saw before, and it's also a great test. I hope that I'll be testing it very soon in good lighting conditions and low light and all that, so stay tuned for that guys. As for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, bye.